We're going to start our review of Chapter 12, the chapter that dealt with the planet Neptune. First, I'd like you to get out your solar system detective sheets. I sent them through email, and you should print out two of them. One to fill in for the planet Uranus, which we haven't done yet, and one to fill out for the planet Neptune. If you haven't had those printed out by your parent yet, then go ahead and pause this video and get those printed out. So the first thing we're going to do is fill in the solar system detective for the planet Uranus. And we want to color it sort of a bluish green. If you have a teal color crayon or a teal colored pencil, just go ahead and use that to fill in Uranus. Remember that it has sort of a blue-green color because it has methane in its atmosphere, and methane absorbs red light and reflects blue light. It's also, the atmosphere on Uranus is also reflecting back other colors of light, and so it doesn't look like a true blue. It looks more like a teal or a greenish blue color. Uranus is the seventh planet from the Sun, and it's distinctive for its icy blue-green color. It is the third largest planet, and it is about 19 astronomical units from the Sun. Remember that one astronomical unit is the distance from Earth to the Sun, and that is 93,000 miles. So Uranus is a lot further away from the Sun than Earth is. Uranus is a gaseous planet, and it takes about 84 Earth years for it to circle the Sun. Uranus has a day length of 17 hours, and if you weighed 100 pounds on Earth, you would weigh 85 pounds on Uranus. Now we're going to fill in our solar system detective sheet for the planet Neptune. The planet Neptune, you're going to want to color a nice blue. Neptune, again, is blue because of the methane in its atmosphere. It has a lot more methane than Uranus does, and so it's a lot more blue when we look at it in space. Neptune is the eighth planet from the Sun, and it is distinctive for the great dark spot. It's the fourth largest planet, and it is 30 astronomical units from the Sun. Uranus is a gaseous planet, and the length of its year is 164 Earth years. The length of its day is 17 hours, and if you weighed 100 pounds on Earth, you would weigh only 11 pounds on the planet Neptune. One of the assignments that we had was to fill in a worksheet on the anatomy of a gas giant. And so this should have been pretty easy for you because we've been going over this in class the whole time we have been studying gas giants. Remember that most gas giants have an outer atmosphere, which is its upper layer of clouds. Below the clouds is the area that we would call the atmosphere. And below that, most of the gas giants also have an area that scientists call the mantle. The mantle is where the gases have cooled enough that they are liquid. So instead of having gaseous hydrogen, you have liquid hydrogen. Instead of having gaseous ammonia or gaseous methane, you have liquid ammonia and liquid methane. And finally, they believe that most of the gas giants have a rocky inner core. Remember that on Jupiter and Saturn, this core is possibly molten because they know that it is generating heat that goes up into the atmosphere of Jupiter and Saturn. It's probably not molten for the planets Uranus or Neptune. If you'll get out your Lesson 12 study guide, if you don't have it with you, go ahead and pause this video and get it out, and we'll go over the answers to that. Neptune is the last planet in our solar system. It is the fourth largest planet and has a bright blue color. Like Uranus, methane in the atmosphere of Neptune absorbs red light from the Sun and reflects blue light. Neptune is so far from the Sun, you need a telescope to see it. Neptune is very cold. Its atmosphere is about 353 degrees Fahrenheit below zero. Neptune has 6 rings that we know of. Its rings are made of dust-sized particles, not rocks or ice like other rings that circle other gas giants. Neptune wasn't found or discovered accidentally. Its discovery was the result of a long search. After finding Uranus, astronomers noticed that its orbit wobbles. They believed the gravity of a mystery planet was pulling on Uranus. Galileo had seen Neptune through his telescope, but he mistook it for a star. Neptune was recognized as a planet in 1846 and named by one of the astronomers who helped find it, Urbain Le Verrier. Neptune is very far away from the Sun, and it takes 164 Earth years to orbit once. A day on Neptune is about 17 hours. Neptune is cold and covered in methane ice. The stripes astronomers see are storms in the atmosphere, and like Jupiter, a large dark storm can be seen as a great spot. The winds on Neptune reach 750 miles per hour. Its rocky core may have the same mass as Earth. Astronomers have discovered 13 moons around Neptune. The biggest is named Triton. Triton orbits Neptune in the opposite direction from the way Neptune rotates. It's the only moon that we know about that does this. The surface of Triton is filled with geysers that probably spew out chemicals. And remember that the name Neptune comes from the Roman god of water. Originally, he was the god of just fresh water, but later, as the years went by and they told more stories about this god, Neptune, they also considered him to be the god of the sea. Remember that Neptune was the brother of both Pluto and Jupiter, and he's usually depicted as riding horses and with a trident, one of those three-pronged weapons. So who exactly discovered Neptune? That's an interesting story. We know that several astronomers saw Neptune but didn't realize that it was a planet. For example, you read in your book that Galileo Galilei in 1612 and again in 1613 observed Neptune, but he mistook it for a star. It never even occurred to him that there was another planet out there to be discovered. In 1781, William Herschel, the man who, along with his sister Caroline, discovered the planet Uranus, actually also discovered Neptune, but he didn't realize it. He thought that it was a star. He observed it and just let it pass by, thinking that it was a star. Interestingly enough, in 1830, William Herschel's son John also saw Neptune. He had a good enough telescope that he could see that it was a blue disk, but he also mistook it for a star. Never even occurred to him that he had discovered a new planet. In 1821, an astronomer named Alexis Bouvard was studying the orbit of Uranus. And he decided that there was something pulling on that planet and that there was probably another planet beyond Uranus. He published information about that, which an English astronomer named John Couch Adams read when he was in college. He wasn't even a graduate yet. He was an undergraduate. And he became so intrigued with the idea of the wobble of Uranus's orbit that he began on his summer vacation to try to mathematically figure out if there was another planet beyond the planet Uranus, how big would it be, what its mass would be, and about where it would be in the sky. From what I've been able to research, he was fairly accurate when he predicted what the mass of that other planet would be. But he wasn't very accurate as to where you would find this other planet in the night sky. When he came back from his summer vacation with his calculations, he tried to convince people at his university to start looking for this other planet. But because his calculations on where it should be in the night sky were so iffy, the astronomers who were at the university he was at declined to even look for it. I'm sure that disappointed him. Meanwhile, in France, Urbain Le Verrier also independently was doing calculations. He didn't even realize that John Adams was doing those calculations. He was doing calculations of his own, and he was doing that independently. Le Verrier didn't bother to try and figure out how massive the mystery planet was going to be, but he did try to calculate where it would be in the night sky, and he was a lot more accurate than John Couch Adams had been. And so when the astronomer Johann Gottfried Galle went looking for this mystery planet, he actually used Le Verrier's calculations, and it was pretty amazing that just by using math, Le Verrier was able to predict within like 1 degree of accuracy where Galle actually ended up finding Neptune in the night sky. So when Galle discovered Neptune officially, he was very celebrated. There's sort of a dispute as to who is credited with finding or discovering it. The English want to think that John Couch Adams discovered it because of his calculations. He was about 6% off. The French want to say that Leverrier discovered it. Granted, Adams and Leverrier only discovered it on paper. And then, of course, the Germans would like to say that Galle discovered Neptune. Just looking on the internet, I think it's probably fairest to say that it was a group discovery, that without the mathematical calculations of Adams and or Leverrier, Galle would not have known where to look. And without someone to look and confirm their calculations, then Leverrier and Adams would never have been proved correct. So there you go. You read that Voyager 2 visited Neptune. And so without having sent a space probe to Neptune, we would know very little about it. It's so far away, it's difficult to study. Because Voyager 2 did visit Neptune, we know that Neptune has at least 6 rings. And in addition to the rings around Neptune, Neptune has several moons. The 3 largest of Neptune's moons are Triton, Proteus, and Nereid. Last but not least, before we take our quiz, I'd like to go over the answers to the what do you remember questions. Make sure you get those out, and if you don't have them with you, go ahead and pause this video and get them so that you can be sure that you have the correct answers. What chemical gives Neptune its blue color? We've already discussed this several times today. That would be the chemical methane. Why was Neptune discovered? We've already discussed that also. Astronomers were actually looking for another planet. And what made them think that there was another planet beyond Uranus? Because they observed that the orbit of Uranus wobbled. How long does it take Neptune to revolve around the Sun? Once again, 164 Earth years. And what are the names of Neptune's 3 biggest moons? They are Triton, Proteus, and Nereid. What is a geyser? A geyser is a hole in the ground through which, usually on Earth, it's hot water comes up from under the ground and spews out. On other planets, astronomers think that it is not water coming up, but instead chemicals being spewed up. Is water coming from the geysers on Triton? I sort of already answered that. No. What spacecraft has visited Neptune? That would be Voyager 2. And what was your favorite part of this lesson? That's something that you need to answer and you won't be quizzed over. So that concludes our review of Chapter 12. Good luck on your quiz. And if you have any questions, please have your parent email me or we can FaceTime.